In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Thanks, Lisa. Today we are honored to have Dr. Lori Langdon with us, a trusted pediatrician, educator, and storyteller whose life and career are as inspiring as they are impactful. Dr. Langdon's new book, Doctors Work in Air Conditioning, an intimate look at Southern culture and the challenges of rural medicine, releases February 4th. Drawing from nearly 30 years as a rural pediatrician, she shares poignant, funny, and heartbreaking stories from her childhood in tobacco fields to her rise as a leading voice in pediatric care. Lori, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for being on the program.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here.
You've made it so far. What inspired you to want to look in the rearview mirror and tell your story?
That is a great question. And I believe it was that I had overcome so much adversity as a child that I wanted to teach other young people, especially those in rural areas, that your dreams are accessible. You can do this. You have an opportunity to achieve the things that you're dreaming of, and that it's only your own self-limitations that are holding you back. So many kids in rural areas believe that they can't achieve more because no one around them has, or maybe no one in their family has. And so I think we need to reach to those rural areas and teach them they can achieve their dreams. And it also, one of the points of the book is how we have a lot of healthcare disparities that remain in rural areas, particularly in pediatrics. And part of the solution of that is to encourage and inspire those young people in the rural areas to perhaps decide to pursue a career in medicine and then be part of the solution to go back and really tackle those healthcare disparities.
Why do those disparities exist?
Oh, there are so many reasons. And I lived them both in my childhood and then as a practicing provider. If you think about it, we have a large percentage of the U.S. population that lives in rural areas, about 20%. But we only have about 9% of physicians that practice in rural areas. Think about what young people want often. And I'm not trying to stereotype them, but many of them want access to theater, opera, malls, shopping, nightlife, maybe professional sports, arenas, and all the things, the bright lights in the big city, right? And many of them don't necessarily realize yet they would love to be in a calmer, sweeter, rural area. And some of the challenges are very real. Maybe they wouldn't make as much money. There are tremendous challenges to keeping financially a private practice alive in a rural area. For example, especially in peds, rural areas are more poor than urban areas. And so for children, if they are on state insurance, which is Medicaid, you could have in a rural area an entirely Medicaid clinic. Well, what if, heaven forbid, there were a government shutdown? Geez, like the other night when everything, right, was shut down. Terrifying. If you're 100% Medicaid pediatric clinic in the middle of nowhere and you get no income. You have no input to your financial status. You can't pay your employees. You can't pay your bills, much less your own salary. That's terrifying. So there are some legitimate reasons young people choose not to come to rural areas. The patients are sicker. The patients have more likely have trouble with transportation to get to a larger city to access subspecialist care that they may need. The patients are typically of a lower socioeconomic level, which means they may have more difficulties understanding your directions and may be more non-compliant. You may have concerns if you go to a rural area. Will my spouse be able to become employed here? Will my children get a quality education here? You know, we chose to homeschool intentionally because of some of these concerns. That's another whole chapter, another whole book. And that was my husband staying home full time. He's the hero of the story, if you didn't notice. And so much of what I've done, I couldn't have done without him, particularly having the 6 children. So there are a lot of people that just aren't able maybe to find their spouse's employment or are too concerned about the educational level or the level of work because of the need in rural areas or the lack of access to specialists yourself for your own personal medical care or for calling in referrals, right? So imagine, this was my experience. When you are receiving your training in residency, maybe you do have to go to a really scary delivery of a very premature infant. But you know that you have a neonatologist in your back pocket who can assist you. If that baby looks unusual and you think maybe they have a syndrome, you call the geneticist, no big deal. If the baby has a really complicated time on the ventilator and you have to get an expert opinion, the pulmonologist stops by on the baby and rounds on them, right? Anything you need, they're at your fingertips. And all the training is done in these university medical centers, huge, which is good. We need to have exposure to all that. But then you start your own practice in the middle of nowhere, and who's the geneticist? You are. Who's the pulmonologist? You are. Who's the cardiologist? And you hear a funny murmur and you're not quite sure. Again, that is you. All of the liability is on you, and the pressure and the fear. It's terrifying. And so I could totally see now how young people would feel like, even for their own legal protection, I need all of my helpers and my mentors and the specialists around me to help take the best care of these children, right? So it takes a little bit of gumption, I would say. In my case, just rose-colored glasses. I was so foolish. As I finished residency, you get really good at all those procedures you do in the neonatal ICU, right? I was famous for putting in arterial lines in the wrist of 2-pound babies. I could do the umbilical venous catheters. I could intubate. I could do all the things. And for some crazy, slightly cocky reason, I thought, I need to keep doing this. I need to save all the babies in the rural areas. What I didn't realize is that no one else in the hospital was trained in neonatal resuscitation protocol. So while I was leaning over my own giant belly pregnant with one of our many children and bagging or doing positive pressure ventilation for the baby, I asked the nurse that the labor and delivery had sent down to assist me to provide chest compressions, which, in television for CPR, but for babies, it's just... And I asked her to do chest compressions, and she said, "Who, me? I've never done chest compressions." That was the most terrifying moment of my life, and I was afraid the surge of adrenaline in my own body had stunted my baby, but he turned out fine. He's getting a PhD in economics. He's good. Maybe he supercharged his brain. I don't know. It was probably the 18 months of breastfeeding, actually. But anyway, so I realized at that time that no one else in the hospital, not labor and delivery nurses, not newborn nursery nurses, not respiratory therapists, not even anesthesia, not even OB, was trained in neonatal resuscitation protocol, which is why in rural areas, your friendly local pediatrician has to attend every single daggum C-section, even if there are no fetal indications. Well, that has ginormous lifestyle implications, right? Because a lot of the stat sections are in the middle of the night. So I cannot tell you how many times I had to remove my own child who was nursing, throw the baby to my husband, not quite literally, and then he would throw in the freezer packs into the breast pump, and I would take off to the hospital, and I could get there in less than 5 minutes. We built our home close to the hospital for this reason. And that is not something that's easy to recruit a young person to.
Especially today, right? Grassroots are different.
Exactly. These young people now have gotten enough brains to realize, wait, this is my life. It's the only one I get. And I was still in some sort of I will sacrifice everything that I am for these potential babies that I could save, right? And not thinking of all the costs this would take on family and life and stress levels and all of these things. So it's a hard sell to recruit young people straight out of residency, especially to do rural pediatrics. Even in rural areas like where I live now, the adult docs figured out long ago to separate inpatient hospitalist work, usually 12-hour shifts, and when you're gone, you're gone. There's no call. There's no running into your patients at the Walmart. There's just hospital work and you're home, right? And then there for adult medicine, or you're in the clinic, and you don't have to worry about rounding on your patients in the hospital. You don't have to worry about going to stat C-sections. You're just in the clinic. But for pediatrics in rural areas, our inpatient and outpatient, it all falls under our responsibilities. So it is a very difficult sell to recruit rural pediatricians.
We're talking with Dr. Lori Langdon. The book that she has written is Doctors Work in Air Conditioning, an intimate look at Southern culture and the challenges of rural medicine. As I read the book, Lori, a number of emotions came up.
Oh.
How did you find the courage to go back to that time, remember everything, and write about it?
Also an excellent question, and that part has been harder than I realized. I have received a little bit of pushback from family. And now that I'm a professional and I've had training and pediatrics, we are all about something called trauma-informed care. And we know about adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, ACEs scores, and how a rough childhood can increase your adult risk for both mental and physical health concerns. Well, one of my own very close family members, after they read the draft, said, "Lori, family secrets need to stay in the family." And I said, "Oh no, that sounds like something an abuser would say, or like something someone who has been abused would say," which would have been the case. And I didn't realize I would get any pushback on that. It came as a surprise to me. I thought other people remembered it the way that I remembered it and the way that it happened. Here's a little secret. I wrote stories my whole childhood. So I know these are accurate. I have both crystal clear memories of them, and I had the stories already written as a child. So many of these stories I had used when I applied. I went to this crazy residential high school for 11th and 12th grade, the North Carolina School of Science and Math, which was my savior as far as catching up academically so that I could then be prepared to go to medical school and everything. But as I was getting into that, I used some of these stories for my personal statements, and then similarly used them for my applications for scholarships. And so these stories have been with me a long time, but I had not shared them widely until this Tuesday, February 4th. So I am hoping they will be well received. I can only believe, while I am a big fish in a little pond here in Harnett County, North Carolina, nobody else in the world is going to know my actual family members. And so I hope that their fears will be unfounded that, oh dear, we've been discovered. Our childhood was rough. And our childhood was not as rough as many people. I openly realize that. But there were some challenges for sure. Not all 5-year-olds crop tobacco. That's a little different. Not all 7-year-olds who are as short as I was drive tractors on the actual road who can't reach the pedals. And then when they stand on the pedals, it's too lightweight, not my problem now, too lightweight to push the pedals down. So anyway, we certainly had some challenges, and we're not rich at all during childhood. But that's been the toughest part, is realizing that some people weren't quite ready to share some of these secrets that I didn't realize really were actual secrets. So that's been interesting. And that wasn't even the primary goal of the book. The goal was to discuss the healthcare disparities of peds. I just wanted people to get a clear understanding of who I am and where I come from and how that informed my decision to return to a rural area.
You've set the book up with a number of Langdon laws, which I really enjoyed.
Thank you.
What's one of your favorites?
Oh, there are so many. And there are even some that aren't in the book. My husband, I don't know if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
Oh, my husband was Dave Ramsey before there was a Dave Ramsey. My husband saves aluminum foil to reuse. Do you know what I mean? He'll let the wax paper dry out and get another go. Just until we had 4 biological kids and then adopted 2 additional daughters. So we have 6. And until we went suddenly up till 6, it was actually 7 at the time because their older half sister came at the time. Until he went from 4 to 7 children, he did not use the dryer. He hung up the clothes to dry by hand. I mean, this man is a workhorse. I'm telling you, he's like a robot. He needs little sleep. He exercises. He has discipline. He doesn't eat red meat. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I, on the other hand, will take a nap whenever it is offered. But anyway, so where were we going with that?
Langdon laws.
Yes, Langdon laws. So because my husband is so very frugal, that got us some of our laws. When we were married, I was only 19. I was a sophomore in college. It was Christmas Eve. We chose that because the church already had poinsettia as present, right? So it saved us some floral money there. And he bought my wedding dress off the rack with his tobacco burning money from the summers. And it was precious, absolutely precious. And so our very first Langdon law that we came up with was that, this sounds so mean, but it's usually often true, the length of the marriage is inversely correlated with the cost of the wedding. Because we just figured that if this young couple starts out making all these terrible financial choices just based on impressing other people, just not the way to go, that it could set up a bad precedent for their relationship. and maybe they wouldn't make wise long-term decisions or be able to afford a down payment or what have you. So that was our very first Langdon law. And there were many yet to come. And then I have some that are more medical and some that are real life. I really do seriously advise, I teach now at the medical school, and I advise my young people, you guys, everyone's going to assume that you're wealthy just because you're a physician, and particularly if you choose pediatrics or have staggering, crippling medical school debt. That's not going to be true. And so you need to learn how to buy generics. Generics are fantastic. There is no need to pay for a brand name's advertising, right? So buy generics. When somebody at the office asks you to buy the wrapping paper for their kid's school, be very careful, because if Linda asks you, then Sherry's going to ask you, and then Janice is going to ask you. And before you know it, they're squabbling because you spent more on one kid than the other. And it is much easier to just stay out of that. Just say, no, thanks. I say this. How do I know this? Because I made all the mistakes. I get pressured easily and I don't say no to anything. And I had all the home, when they come into your home and try to sell you a vacuum cleaner, and I bought all the vacuum cleaners. I just don't have a home demo. Just don't do it.
It's 30 years later. You're still in medicine. Do you still enjoy it?
I am actually, funny question, I love the babies. Oh my goodness. To help moms get that baby latched on the breast, encourage her to continue breastfeeding, doing that normal newborn physical exam, providing anticipatory guidance, watching them grow and develop, knowing which vaccines happen when, being able to calculate most of the drug doses in my head because it's been so long now. I love it. I love for people to trust me. I can say there are increasing levels of frustration in pediatrics, part of why we have a massive shortage right now. One of those is, I'm about to break out political. Will I get excommunicated? There has been an increasing amount of vaccine hesitancy, trying to be polite, in our culture, which has drastically and dramatically increased when wealthy and famous non-scientific people, RFK Jr., get in the mix and try to increase vaccine hesitancy and fear around vaccines, not by spreading just innocent misinformation, but by intentionally, repeatedly spreading disinformation. That is falsehoods that they know to be falsehoods, but they continue to put major money into spread. And so one of the frustrations in pediatrics these days is all the time that it takes to sit with a family. And I love the families and I love the kids, and that's why I'm doing this, and I want them to be vaccinated. We know vaccines save lives. We know vaccines are effective. We know vaccines are safe. We have the data. We have the numbers. We have the science. We have the evidence-based medicine. But taking all the time in the exam room to say, Mom, Dad, I know you're worried about this, and I know it can be scary, and I appreciate that, but I need you to trust me. I know how to read studies, and I know about statistical significance and probabilities and sample size and the p-value. I know it in randomized controlled trials and placebo-controlled and double-blinded studies. I know this stuff. And most people on your Facebook post who say they did the research, they don't know this stuff, right? And so I'm sorry you're scared. I think probably where you got the information may have been on social media or an AI-generated report or I don't know what, but I need you to believe me that this vaccine is safe, that I gave it to my children, that I give it to all my patients, and it protects them, and that I have seen babies die of illnesses that are vaccine preventable. And I wish nobody had to ever see that happen. And a lot of people haven't. And that's why we have a short memory. People are too young to remember the ravages of polio. People haven't seen the kids die of complications of measles. People haven't seen babies die of pertussis. I've seen teenagers die of meningitis on Christmas Eve, one of those years in residency. So I'm very passionate about it. And we have to be careful as pediatricians not to say, listen to me, I am right. And that's called paternalism in medicine, when we're like, I am the knowledge, the knower of all things, and you have to listen to me. We don't want to be like that. We want to be open and kind and listen and get their feelings and their concerns. But nothing fills me with more rage than people who deliberately spread lies about vaccines. I cannot understand. Well, I'd like to say I can't understand their motivation, except it's money. Let's be real. Millions and millions and millions.
Dr. Lori Langdon is our guest.
Sorry, I got off on a tangent.
And she's not a very opinionated guest either. One of the calmer ones that we've had on the show.
Yep.
She's written a fantastic book that debuts on February 4th. It's called Doctors Work in Air Conditioning, an intimate look at Southern culture and the challenges of rural medicine. You've described in your book your mother as a nurturing and caring individual. How did she influence the woman you grew up to be?
You are so kind. She was precious, and she made it clear from the time we were born that we, her children, were the reason she existed. We were the reason God put her on earth. We were the reason she still is alive. We were the reason that she had any joy or hope in her life was her children. And that part of her absolutely made me maternal. There is no doubt in my mind. The reason we chose to have a kid in medical school intentionally, which was not typically done at Duke, by the way. It was a wild and crazy idea back in the day, trust me. But I had this ridiculous fear that all of my eggs would dry up, and I still wanted to be a mom. I was terrified to wait too long, as so many professional women do. And then they decide when they're about 45, okay, I'd like a family. Well, your body doesn't always cooperate with that. So I had my first baby at 25. We weren't wasting any time worried about these eggs drying up. I was on the job, man. And so my mom's just massive maternal influences and maternal nature definitely transferred. Now, the parts of her that I often get frustrated with for myself, she is a very precious but low self-esteem. This sweet woman will call me and say, hey, honey, I was just calling to see if you were doing all right, but you probably don't have time to talk to you. It's okay. I'll call back later. I'm sorry if I bothered you. Mom, it's fine. I answered the phone. It means I can talk now. Don't apologize for calling to check on me. Bless her, bless her, bless her. And she will literally read the Bible in 5 translations. She will literally read scripture aloud to her dog. Kid you not. She's a nut. She's hilarious. She also, this is the other thing I inherited, she flips all of her phrases and always has. For example, like duck off a water's back. You just got to let it go. All the time. And so I will find myself also flipping phrases, and then you think, wait a minute. Did I just say they put the horse before the cart? Shouldn't the horse be before the cart? So there are wonderful and not as wonderful parts that I definitely got from my mom.
Everything's a lesson, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
An interesting question that I'm sure our listeners are wondering about is that a life in medicine is more than a full-time job. Absolutely. Holding a marriage together as a doctor is a full-time job.
Yes.
And on top of that, you added 4 biologicals and 2 adopted children to that mix. Why so many?
Well, my husband is just so good. What can I say? He is, for an example of how amazing my husband is, when we had 7 in our home, he was homeschooling 7 children in different grades. This man's crazy, amazing. And he loves math, and he loves history, and he loves geography, and he's just as good at everything. He had been working on his master's degree. His undergrad's in agricultural engineering. He's also a farmer, and I'd always sworn I would never marry one, but I found the perfect farmer who was an intellectual. It worked out great. Well, anyway, when we were up to 7 kids in the house at the same time, this is a brilliant idea. We assigned a color to each child. For example, Caleb, I believe, was blue. So Caleb had a blue toothbrush. Caleb had a blue cup in the kitchen. Caleb had a blue washcloth. Caleb had blue towels. So if there was a wet towel on the floor, Caleb, pick up your towel, right? If the blue toothbrush was not wet, Caleb, you didn't brush your teeth yet for bed. It was brilliant. And before that, there were just 20,000 cups in the kitchen that were always dirty. And this way, you could keep reusing your blue cup because nobody else was going to drink out of it because the blue cup's Caleb's cup. It worked great. So this is the level of tightness of ship my husband ran when the kids were little. They're all grown now. And it's funny, when they come back home to visit and they see, we still have 2 young adults living at home. But when the older ones come back home and visit, like, wait a minute. You have brand name Honey Nut Cheerios? What is going on here? We didn't get any brand name cereals when we were kids. And they're like, well, there's fewer children here. We can afford it now. Sorry.
You came first. You had to starve.
That's exactly right. We just didn't have money then. We're doing a little better now.
How do you build self-esteem? I mean, obviously, from your mom. She didn't have any. Somehow you got it.
Absolutely.
You escaped.
Yes.
What's your advice? What's a Langdon law about building self-esteem?
Children do need to know that they're valuable. They need to know that they're the reason I'm existing on this earth, that I love them that much and they're worth that much love. And we went into some of this when one of our kids battled with a pretty severe depression. And when they're at the middle and the worst of that depression, they almost can't even feel that love or even believe that you love them. That's how rough depression can be. But to build it, repeated opportunities for them to demonstrate competence. So that's part of why chores when they're young is actually a wonderful idea, not just to make them work, but that they see I can do this job and I can do it well and they can take pride in it. That's so very valuable. Repeatedly commenting on that where they can hear you. I love the trick of letting them hear the parents talk about them when they think we don't know they're hearing, not directly to them, and just, did you see what a great job they did cleaning off the porch today? That porch looks fantastic. Oh, I sure did. They're really coming along. And so I want them to know that we appreciate their chore quality and how amazing they are, but praising them face to face as well. Also, if you're going to have arguments with your kids, owning up to it. I am so sorry I snipped at you today. I'd had a rough day at work and I was really low on patience and I was frustrated about something that had nothing to do with you. I'm very sorry about that, honey. Do you understand? And then just being honest. Do you understand what mommy's saying? I still love you and that had nothing to do with you. So owning up to your own mistakes, praising them for a job well done, letting them know they're the reason you exist, and letting them know both parents are just so proud of them. The other thing is, and not every family has this opportunity. I know I'm blessed beyond measure, but I think it's healthy for them to see our loving marriage. So when a child understands, which is a very young age, that they are half of this person, half of that person, and those two halves really adore each other, it makes them feel good and it's good for them. And that is part of why I counsel divorced families very vigorously. That I will beat that mama or daddy if I hear them trash talking the other parent in front of the child. It hurts my heart. And I will catch them right in the office. And the older I get, the less polite sometimes I am. Being raised in the South, you learn to be, sugarcoat everything. Well, bless your heart. It's going to be all right. Good job, even when it's not true. And I've always been that way, especially with patients, because we're just trying to be polite and professional and calm in the office. But I have started calling people on some things. So these days, if the mom is, every time I get this baby back from their daddy, it's got a bad diaper rash, I'll start saying, oh, but diaper rashes can happen very easily, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the dad did something wrong. And now, while the baby's tiny, is a good time to start practicing not speaking poorly of their biological father, because they'll hear that as criticism of themselves. And that really would be very inappropriate if you wanted your child to turn out well, right? And just leading them alone. I have done the same thing. We are dealing with a lot of marijuana smoking, not just the vaping, not just the cigarette smoking, which is obviously huge here in North Carolina, but the marijuana smoking. So the other day, funny story, I had, it was probably a year ago. I don't know. It's been a little bit, but I had this baby, newborn baby, reeked of marijuana smoke. I mean, that's a classic. Everybody knows what marijuana smoke is, right? And trust me, marijuana smoke's no healthier for that baby's lungs than the tobacco smoke. They both increase the risk of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. And so I asked the parent, has anybody been smoking around this baby? No, ma'am. Well, that's good, but okay. And then I wait till the next visit, 2 week. Well, somebody has got to be smoking around this baby. No, ma'am. And I finally got so frustrated. I just said, do you guys have like a marijuana scented candle or something? Because I am telling you, this diaper bag, this baby's clothes, its hair, they're reeking of tobacco, of marijuana smoke. And finally, one of the parents said, oh, well, we smoke in the car on the way here, but you said, does anybody smoke in the home? The car's worse than the house. It's more concentrated for that poor little baby's lungs. So I will admit, the older I get, the more likely I am to call somebody out on something. But sometimes it's important.
What's the secret to staying married as long as you have?
To find somebody as good as my husband. And nobody ever does. I feel guilty because, my poor sister, had 3 marriages. So many people are unhappy in their marriage. I think it is putting each other ahead of your own needs and looking at everything as a team. So from the very beginning, all of our finances, it's just a big bucket. Because my husband sometimes jokes, I'll say, wow, that was amazing what you did. And he'll say, well, it was amazing what you did earning a living. well, honey, I couldn't do that if you don't do this. It's just all the same. We're on the same team here. So it's all the same finances. It's all the same planning. So putting the other person and their well-being above your own needs or wants, and very early understanding what is a need or a want. I swear my husband possessed my 3-year-old. One of my kids, we were in Walmart, the Walmart we say around here, because that's about the fanciest place we have to shop. And I had put something in the cart. I don't remember what it was, but I swear to you, my 3-year-old child looked at me and said, Mommy, is that a want or a need? You are 3 years old. Is your father channeling through you? What are you, a baby Dave Ramsey now? What the heck, man? So we always joke that within any relationship, you need to have a spender and a saver. I am obviously the spender, and my husband is obviously the saver. But you need to have both, because if we were both savers, we're never going to have any fun. There's no vacations. There's no going out to eat at a restaurant. There's no Amazon splurges, nothing, right? But then if we were all me, would the mortgage be paid? I don't know. So it's good to have a blend. I would say have a balance. And we are believers, and we do believe that having a shared faith makes a huge difference. And our families are very compatible, and we had extraordinarily similar upbringings. I mean, if you want to get right down to it, our grandparents went to high school together. Our parents went to high school together. And yes, you have to worry about consanguinity in the rural areas. That's when you're actually blood related. But my daughter, who's all into history and heritage and lineages, she did all the research, and we're clear.
After the fact. So
it would have been a little late if we were not, yes.
What do you hope people will take away from reading Doctors Who Work in Air Conditioning?
I hope they realize so many things, that doctors are real people. We're just human beings. And I don't know if you've seen this in the news, but the rates of assault on healthcare workers have been drastically increasing over the last few years. And that's tragic. We're having a physician shortage. It's hard to recruit people to do pediatrics or rural medicine, much less both. Those precious people going into medical care, they're literally giving their lives to help other folks. And so the idea of them being attacked physically is just ridiculous and horrible. And it's not only hurting that individual provider, but society as a whole, because if that provider is rendered unable to work, all those other patients go unseen and uncared for. So I hope people take from the book that we're human beings. And all the physicians I know did not, especially in pediatrics, did not go into this to pursue some sort of lucrative, rich career. They sacrificed their entire 20s being in school to help people, honestly. And I hope they take away from it that being from a rural place doesn't mean you can't achieve your dreams, that pediatrics needs more people to go into it. Last year, we had 250 slots unfilled in the nationwide residency matching program for pediatrics. That's terrifying because we already have a projected workforce issue. We already have a current workforce issue in pediatrics, severely so projected, and now all the more severe from this pitiful match this past year. So concerning. So we're never going to fill this gap in rural areas if we're still down pediatricians altogether. So I hope they take that we need more pediatricians, and perhaps even policymakers and society as a whole could say, wait, why is it we're paying pediatricians half of what other primary care providers make? Did they go to lower quality schools? Duke? No, we didn't. Did they have lower board scores? Nope. Really good standardized testing scores. Were they just not kind or personable? Nope. Love your baby like my own. Why? Why are we paying pediatricians half? I don't understand. Yes, the babies are cuter than the adults. I'll give you that. Yes, I don't have to deal with adult sputum, which I cannot handle. Also don't love the whole GYN world down there. Just happy as the lark not to have to deal with that. So you would think more kids would choose this, right? It's so much better than adult medicine. But I think it's the financial part, the salary, that's really hurting our recruitment efforts.
The book is Doctors Work in Air Conditioning, an intimate look at Southern culture and the challenges of rural medicine. It was written by our very special guest, Dr. Lori Langdon. You can get it February 4th, wherever cool books are sold. How can they find you on the web, Dr. Langdon?
That's right. So I have a YouTube channel called Dr. Langdon. Easy to find me. Just spell out Dr. DOCTOR. And most of those are just little videos. They're educational about common childhood rashes, diaper rashes, colds, flu, COVID, vaccines, all the things.
This has been an absolute joy. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you so much. You are so kind. I've had a blast.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.